Welcome back, everybody, to the Even Your Dynasty show.
We just got breaking news in.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Even Your Dynasty show. We are doing a little post-game show. It is just me tonight. Dan and Ricky are on assignment, so we're going to probably keep this one a little shorter than normal with the late games and everything. And, Dan got sick this week, so you guys are just stuck with me tonight. So we're going to talk a little post-game today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the, Chapman and Schmitt are coming back here soon. It sounds like we've got a little bit of a timetable on that. And we're going to talk, Zach Minasian did an interview with, I think it was with KNBR, and he mentioned that the Giants are looking to be pretty active at the deadline. Now, a little bit of it was a lot of GM talk, I will say that, but some interesting stuff there. So to kick it off, the Giants won 7-2 tonight. Robbie Ray threw a complete game, threw himself a gem, gave up 2 or 3 hits, 2 homers. The second one was actually kind of funny because Marte's sitting there hitting a jump shot between second and third, like he hit a 6-run homer, and they were still down 5. So I thought that was kind of hilarious that these guys are celebrating like that when they're down 5, but is what it is. Willie Adames had 3 hits today. That was a really big positive sign today. The OPS is creeping its way back up near 700. So fingers crossed he can just go on a heater, because I saw something interesting regarding him for last season, that at the midway point last season, he had only hit 13 home runs, and then he hit 18 in the second half. So obviously he's got kind of a track record of being a second half player. Hopefully he can keep that one going, but he's off to a nice start so far in the second half, especially this series against Arizona. He had a really nice series. Ramos had a couple RBI hits. Rafi Devers with a 2 RBI single. But the real story today, it definitely was Robbie Ray. He gave the bullpen some much needed, rest today. They're in the middle of a 16 straight games, playing 16 straight consecutive days, I should say. And to give the bullpen a day off in the middle of that is huge. And now they're going to go to Sacramento. They've got 3 against the A's. And hopefully they can at least take 2 of 3 there, because the reinforcements are coming. The offense, it's been really painful to watch. A lot of struggles there. And you got Casey and Chapman that seem to be coming right around the corner. And supposedly, Chapman, I don't think we're going to count on Chapman playing obviously this weekend. It sounds like he's going to be back for the Philly series. And then Casey, I think, is also about on that same timeline. Chapman's only going to be doing 1 rehab game from what I saw. He's playing a game in Rio this weekend. And then he was taking live BP this morning against Velocity, hitting some bombs in Arizona. That was good to see. But, they badly need those 2. Wisely and Fitzgerald giving them rough at bats, but especially with the Koss injury, you add that in there, that they're incredibly thin. They just had to pull Sergio Alcantara up. Logan Porter got DFA'd to make room for him. And it's going to be, it's going to be rough for a couple of days. So hopefully they can find a way to at least take 2 against the Sacramento A's of Las Vegas, or whatever you want to call them. Hopefully they can at least win 2 there. And then from there, they get some guys back. They got to try and just, you see it in the thumbnail. They got to try and find a way to stay afloat. They lost a lot of games against teams that they probably shouldn't lose that many against, especially, Miami's playing good ball. I want to give them credit, but Miami to get swept by them, to lose 2 of 3 to Chicago, who's been just terrible, and only score 5 runs in that series. It was really just a sad showing. And then Arizona has been really slipping this season. They don't have a lot of pitching. Their bullpen's terrible. I mean, they can score. Don't get me wrong. They can score with the best of them, but you got to play them with, I think Naylor only played 1 game in this series. Corbin Carroll's out. I mean, it was just the perfect time to play Arizona, and you still only got a split. So at least they took the 2, but, that was a pretty rough showing. And what's up, everybody? I'm going to do my best to try and jump in the chats as much as possible. A little harder when there's only me here today, but definitely, if you guys have things you guys want to talk about, throw it in the chat. Like I said, it's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter show today. It'll be cover a couple topics. You guys can just throw some stuff in the chats. We'll try and jump through a few things, but we'll probably keep this a little shorter than usual. So let's see. Predicted after the second game, had to settle for a split. Yeah, that exactly. LD. Ray has been awesome. Ray had a great game today. That, Mark said that was Greg Maddox type performance tonight. He was dotting corners all game. He was mixing his pitches well. And I think something that he doesn't get enough credit for almost was this was actually a pretty difficult strike zone with the home plate umpire. He was not very consistent. I felt the top of the zone where Ray really likes to live a lot, especially with his fastball. The umpire was kind of squeezing that, especially on the corners, on both inside and outside. So not a great zone for Robbie, and he still dominated a very potent Arizona lineup. So he deserves just all the flowers. And really, I mean, him and Logan Webb right here, Aaron's got it. I mean, those are two of your all-stars right there. I don't know how in the NL they could justify either of those guys not making the team. I do think I'm going to go out on a limb. I think the Giants are going to have 3 selections. I think you're going to get those 2, and I think Randy Rodriguez is going to be the third all-star. It wouldn't shock me if one of them doesn't, but I'm going to just go out and say I think it's going to be 3 of them in this one. Audie says, I don't see a future for Luciano here. If we were to trade him, how much value do you think he has left? Not a ton. I think he's more of a throw-in at this point. I don't think he's a centerpiece of any kind of deal. You could see him as a guy that, maybe the Giants swap with another team that's in a similar situation. Maybe another team has a guy that has a little more control that they're looking to move off of. Maybe you see a situation like that, but I don't think he's going to have much value. Unfortunately, the time to trade him would have been prior to this season, last season, the year before, any of that time before. He's on his last option year. They're halfway through the year. Most of these teams aren't going to have, unless he goes to kind of a really bad team. I don't think many teams are going to just pick him up and plug him in right away. I mean, you look at what he's doing down in Sacramento, and I know he hit another home run today, but you're looking at a guy hitting around 220 and striking out 30+% of the time. Doesn't really have a defensive position. I mean, the tools are certainly there. The batted ball metrics are all great for Marco. There's a lot of positives there, but overall, it's pretty hard to look at what he's doing and go, okay, well, yeah, let's just plug him right into a lineup. I mean, it's very tough, especially when he brings no defensive value, no value on the bases. He's playing like a one-tool player at the moment. He's got good power, and outside of that, it's a lot of question marks. So I still think, I'm not giving up on him as a player, but I don't think his future is going to be here. I agree with you there. 3 pitchers, I don't know. I think Randy Rodriguez gets snubbed. I think the issue is who gets in over him. You look around the National League, there's not really that many great relievers. If you go around, there's a handful, a couple guys getting saves, but I mean, that would probably be it, is if they just go with like an extra closer that's racked up some saves. But I mean, Randy Rodriguez has been statistically the most dominant reliever in all of baseball, and I don't think that's going to get ignored by his peers. So that's kind of where I think he's going to get in. I actually feel it's more likely that one of the starters gets snubbed than it is that Randy does. That's my opinion on that. But yeah, and to Aaron's point, middle relievers are a tough sell. You have to be like as dominant as Randy when you're a middle reliever to get in, and he's done it. So I do think he's going to get in. Rick says, what are they going to do with Austin Barnes? I think he's going to be your backup once he's up to speed, get some at bats. They're not really getting anything out of Kevin or out of Kisner. They just DFA'd Logan Porter. Sam Huff had his issues. I think they're going to just deal with the lack of bat out of Austin Barnes, and they're going to just go with the glove on that one. And then Pete says, I want Wisenhunt to get Birdie's next start. Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one. I don't know if they're going to, if they're going to bring Wisenhunt up, I don't know if I really, they're going to have, you start his option clock if you do that. So he's going to end up coming in. You use one of his minor league options this season, and then he would have 2 more years. Now, I've said in the past, like I'm not against that. I think it's fine. If you do that, you're basically saying he's going to go into his age 25 season next season. It'll be his age 26 season the following season, and then in 2028 going into that season, you're basically saying by that opening day we're going to know one way or the other with him. And I do think that's still a reasonable timeline. I mean, this is a guy that's coming on his second full season in AAA. So I think that is reasonable to do that. But will the team want to start his clock if they know they're just kind of trying to skip one of Birdsong's starts? I don't know. That's going to be a tough one. I think they're going to need him, and I think they're going to need him to make significant starts down the stretch anyway, because you look at someone like Landon Roop, who I still think, I mean, they're in a tough spot with Landon Roop as an example. Landon Roop's already thrown, I think, 87 or 88 innings now this season. His career high is 107 in a professional in any season of his career at any level. He's probably their third best pitcher too right now. So, and regardless of struggles that he showed in the middle of the game yesterday, but like overall, if you look at the body of work this season, he's probably been their third best starter. So they're going to be in a really tough spot with him where, they might have to either start skipping some starts and then try and ramp him back up later. If they want him available for a potential postseason run, they might have to just try and ride it out and see how long he lasts until they got to move on. I mean, it's tough. I mean, they're in a really tough spot with him. And then Hayden Birdsong, I mean, he's had some struggles. The command's been really off his last couple starts. That's been his main issue. I mean, the stuff still looks really good. I don't think that's a problem with him. He'll randomly just forget how to throw strikes. And I don't know if he's battling something mechanical. I don't know if he's hitting some kind of physical wall. He shouldn't be hitting a physical wall. He threw 130 innings last season. He's only at, I think, 60 or so this season. So, with Birdsong, I'm not sure where they stand on that one. But they don't really have a better option. That's the thing. We can make the case for Wisenhunt, but between Birdsong and Roop and Verlander, they're not getting tons of good stuff out of. I mean, they got a nice outing against him against the White Sox. We'll see if he can carry that over to another, against a better team. He's kind of had his struggles a lot this season, so I want to pump the brakes on that until we see him against a better team. But they're kind of in a tough spot, and that kind of brings me to, they probably need to trade for a starting pitcher at this deadline. And I know we all look at the offense, and the offense has been pretty tough to watch for quite a while now. Now they've scored 6 yesterday and they scored 7 today. Hopefully it's a sign that they're, going to break out of it. But I definitely think they need another starting pitcher. And, I don't know if they're going to go for necessarily a big name one. We'd have to look at, who's kind of out there, but they need someone that can potentially eat up some innings, because otherwise they're going to be relying on guys like Carson Seymour. They got Mason Black up currently. They kind of flip-flop those two. They're going to be relying on Carson Wisenhunt. I mean, you're right. You're relying on a lot of young pitchers that haven't thrown a ton of innings. And if you look at what they're doing down in Sacramento, they're not holding these guys with kids' gloves. They're not doing what Farhan did, where he was like throwing these guys 1, 2, 3 innings early in the year and doing that for a couple months and then building them up. They're just letting them go. And I mean, these guys are all going to be pretty gassed, I have a feeling, by the end of the season. So that they're in a pretty tough situation. Yeah, Harris, Lone Ranger today. The other guys are not feeling well today, and a little bit late show. You guys are aware we normally try and run these about 8:30 start times today. Looking at the schedule this week, there's night game after night game after night game. Late night, so we couldn't really do it. We'll be back to our normal Thursday schedule early, a little earlier, 8:30 start time starting next week. I looked ahead at the schedule for the rest of the year, and I think there's like one Thursday where they have a night game from here out. So you guys are going to see us pretty much every Thursday night. My opinion, Devers needs an off day or two because of the injuries Melvin mentioned are somewhat significant. He did come through today, but his at-bats are still painful to watch. Yeah, and you look at how he started the year. Devers, I think, was like 0 for 19 with 15 strikeouts or something insane to start the year for Boston. He can have these runs. It happens, but they usually don't last forever. And normally he gets going, and when he gets going, we've all seen what he can do. And he can have some pretty crazy months. Him and Adames has actually done this in the past where he's had those months where he hits, 8, 9, 10 home runs. So I think the hope right now is that, these guys get on a roll here soon. And the pitching's so good that, as bad as the last week and a half, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever have been, if the offense gets going, I mean, I said it I was on NorCal last week, and I said it to them as well. As bad as the offense has been, if the offense just gets on a run for where they just get hot for 3-4 weeks or a month or whatever it is, this team has the pitching that they're capable of putting together like a, 18-8 month or a 20-9 month or something like crazy like that, or 20-8, where they just go way over 500 for a month and they really, take control of the wild card. But, it's hard to look at the offense right now and feel like it's coming. You watch these guys and guys like Ramos, Adames. Well, Ramos has actually been really good this season, but you look at Devers and Adames and Yaz goes through his ups and downs, but Chapman and you see these guys and you go, we know what you've been in the past. Or Jung-Hoo Lee was in April. You see these guys and you're like, oh, I know what these guys have been in the past. These guys have track record. They're not bad hitters. Like at some point they're gonna get going. And it just feels like we've been saying that all season and they just haven't gotten going. And at some point, something's got to give. And you'd like to think that at some point they're going to get hot. And if they do get hot, they could go on a run. But, the deeper we get in the year, it just gets a little tougher. I see Pete, thoughts on Pavlovich. Is this in regards to any specific comments or just him in general? Because I think he's blocked all three of Dan and Ricky and I at this point. And I don't even interact with the guy. He blocked me though. So I'm not sure what that deal was. Grab Luis Severino from the A's. He isn't happy there. I mean, Severino's good. I haven't looked super closely at the kind of year he's having right this second. Severino though has been a really good pitcher. He's gets obviously a lot of ground balls. He could be a really good fit, especially in Oracle Park. That's for sure. I don't. 2-9 with a 5 ERA. Now he's in Sacramento. I mean, it's kind of. He's pitching in a minor league park for a bad team. The ERA is what it is. It could be that. Who knows what's causing all those issues. But, maybe a change of scenery would do him well. You'd like to think that the A's would want to get out of that contract. But that said, if I'm the Giants, do you want to take on all that money? I mean, he's owed, I think, $23 million a year for the next 2.5 years. So it's kind of a tough situation. Pete, I think you're referring to Dakota Jordan, and we are going to try our best. That's all I can say. We've been lucky enough to have some of these minor league prospects that have really, that we've been able to get on the show, obviously, already. We have a handful that we are feeling pretty confident that we'll be able to get next offseason. We're hoping to actually see if we can grab one during the All-Star break, see if maybe we can sneak one in there. But we've got a few that we've kind of, tentatively have lined up for the offseason. So we'll definitely try and get some more there. And Dakota Jordan, I mean, he is obviously top like 2 or 3 on our list of guys that we really want to get in. I love Dakota Jordan as a prospect. I love that they went and got a guy that is a high ceiling, explosive tools type player. You look at him and Bo Davidson right now in the system. The Giants really haven't had prospects like them in a while. And when I say that, it's not to say that they're the best prospects they've had in a while. I just mean the combination of tools. I mean, these are both guys that have genuinely 5 tools and have that potential. Now, you look at Dakota Jordan, and the questions were always, the swing and miss, and he's actually come and he cut the whiff way down. He's cut his strikeouts down. Now he still makes some questionable swing decisions, but most players do. But he's drawn some walks. He's hitting the ball hard. He uses the middle field of the field great. He drives the ball the opposite way great. And I think I said it the other day, maybe in a tweet or something, but he hit that ball to right field. His last home run against Stockton a couple nights ago was the game-winning home run. He hit it 109 miles per hour and 422 feet to right field. And, Oracle Park, maybe it's a home run, maybe it's not. Might depend on if it's a day game or night game or whatever. And I couldn't see a perfect view of the trajectory, so it's kind of hard to tell. Might have been a little too low, but, I see his speed. I mean, this is a guy that was recruited to play D1 football at Mississippi State. I mean, that's an SEC school. And you see his speed and the way he hits the ball into right center or right field. And I'm like, this guy's going to wear out the bricks. My prediction for him, if he pans out as a really good major league player, he might lead the league in triples one year just playing in Oracle Park. So, and that's not to say he's not going to hit a good amount of home runs to go with it too. So, pretty crazy the combination, the ceiling that guys like him and Bo have. And, obviously I still think Bryce is he's far and away their number one prospect right now. He's the fact that he's 20 years old and he's doing what he's doing in AA, AAA already, easily their best prospect. But those two guys, for my money, are top 3 or 4 on prospects list. I think Bo Davidson's going to be a top 100 prospect as soon as next year. I think if they get him to AA and he does well in AA this season, he'll be a top 100 prospect. And Dakota, honestly, if they move him up to Eugene sometime this month and he gets 5-6 weeks in Eugene and does really well there, he might be a top 100 prospect. So it's really nice to see. This is actually a name I really like, Mitch Keller. He's having a great year right now, and he could be really successful in this park. I mean, that's a beautiful thing about Oracle Park. A lot of guys can be successful, and you have, when guys are healthy, you have a pretty solid defense behind you. You've got Patrick Bailey catching. Now, I will sit there, and I was pretty heated about what the level of effort Patrick Bailey gave in yesterday's game. I don't think when you're not hitting, when you have a sub 550 or whatever OPS right now, I don't think you're allowed to put that kind of defensive tape on the field. That's my opinion. I still think the Giants need to get a contingency for catcher. I don't think he should be just as comfortable as he is. I mean, he's been bad. I mean, there's no way of putting it any differently. He's been really good defensively, but he's been a net negative this season because he's that bad offensively. So he's starting to hit a little more, but when you're not hitting much, and then you just let 2 pass balls by that were just really bad that cost your team 3 runs. I mean, it's rough. I mean, he did, someone mentioned he did Carson Seymour dirty. And I mean, there's some truth to that. Now, somebody asked what I think of Seymour. I think Seymour's fine. Arizona has the best offense in baseball, or right up there with teams like the Dodgers and some of the most explosive offenses in baseball. So it's a tough situation. He got no help from his defense. It kind of is what it is. He looked fine in his, 1 inning he threw in Chicago. What I've watched him this season, likes to throw the sinker in on the hands. He doesn't miss a lot of bats for a guy that has, mid to upper 90s stuff and a pretty solid sliders. He actually kind of throws 2 different sliders. He throws more of a sweeper and one that's more of the gyro slider. But, it's hard to tell. It's small sample size at the major leagues. I like what I've seen out of him at the minor league level. Of course, last season, I loved what I saw out of Mason Black at the minor league level. And then he got up to the majors and he was clearly not ready. So somebody asked, what's a reasonable timeline for Dakota Jordan, Bo Davidson? I feel like I saw that in there. I'm missing the chat. Sorry, I'm missing some of these chats, but probably I thought I saw something there. But if somebody asked that, I'd say probably at least 2 years, probably 2 to 3 years for each. I think the system really wants to do a, one level per year kind of situation. I wish they were a little more aggressive. It feels like we're going from one extreme to the other. You had Farhan that wanted to rush these guys through the upper levels. You had guys like Luis Matos who made it to the majors with like less than 250 at bats in AA and AAA combined. You had Casey Schmitt who got rushed to the majors in less than like 2 to 300 at bats in AA and AAA combined. Marco Luciano, they did the same thing to him. Patrick Bailey, they did the same thing to him. They had these guys play like long, rack up a ton of at bats in single A and high A, and then they got them into the upper levels and they just, shot them right through. So I think I'm kind of the opposite. I want to see, especially with college players, I want to see them go fast through San Jose and maybe spend a little more time. But I think the higher level, like the farther through the system they get, you should spend a little bit more time at each of those levels. So I'm not a fan of the way they did it before, but this also feels like they're kind of on the extreme where, you got guys like Jacob Christian, Carlos Gutierrez, Dakota Jordan down in San Jose that it feels like, these guys probably could use time in Eugene this season, get them jump started on that. So can I do a post-game show tomorrow? Unfortunately we won't be doing one tomorrow night. We've got, plans for the 4th. So hopefully everybody else has a lot of plans for the 4th tomorrow. Definitely make sure y'all stay safe, but yeah, no, we won't be doing any show tomorrow night. Jung-Hoo Lee would hit better if his helmet fit. Jung-Hoo Lee would hit better if he just, went the opposite way more frequently. But, he's had some promising at-bats. Obviously, he had a big game yesterday. Today, he actually hit a couple balls hard. The one he hit to, a little bit, it was center field, maybe a little bit right center. He hit that ball hard. I mean, that's not one I will ever complain about. He didn't like try and hit, he didn't look like he was up there trying to hit a home run. He barreled it up hard, he hit it hard, good trajectory. That's one that if he gets it towards a gap, that ball's he's probably standing on third. And if he hits that against most teams, he's probably standing on third. The Diamondbacks just happen to have Alec Thomas who can cover just insane ground in center field. So, wrong game, wrong team to hit it against and the wrong defender. But, I better at bats lately. I still am going to sit there and pound it into the ground that he needs to just hit a ball at where the third baseman's supposed to be. He'd be standing on second every time, the way defenses are lining up for him. So, yeah, I mean, Robert, hey, welcome, Robert. I haven't seen you in here a lot, but I've seen you over with Dan a ton. Yeah, the offense, I think they're streaky. So I think they're better than their season numbers show, but this is part of their identity. They have a ton of streaky hitters. You're going to have the peaks and valleys. And that's the hard thing when you have a bunch of streaky hitters is sometimes the highs can be really high and the lows can be really low. And, we've seen a lot of the lows. We'd love to see the highs. And Don Capoposi McRae with 2 singles and his 20th stolen base today, which is fun. I agree. He needs to get, he needs to get the bat on the ball more frequently if he's ever going to be a major league regular. I know Glenn Kuiper had Kyle Haynes on his channel the other day, and Kyle Haynes has said something that I feel like I've said so many times, and that he needs a better 2-strike approach. And, he's got a lot of swing and miss, and I agree with him. He needs to go a little more simplified. I think he compared him to Zach Neto, like what he was doing was what I recall hearing on that. And I think that's a good comp. Like he needs to simplify his 2-strike approach and just get the ball in play. And he's got a ton of power. It's not to say, don't let out some shaft with no strikes or 1 strike, but fix the 2-strike approach. Who's the best outfield assist arm in the Giants system? That's a good question. I don't know if I know who has the best. A list of some people that have really good arms, though. Definitely, Luis Matos actually has like a 94th percentile arm, believe it or not. Check Baseball Savant's kind of interesting. But Matos is up there. Grant McCray has a great arm for center fielder. Dakota's got a hose. Bo Davidson's got a really good arm. All those guys have great assist arms. So probably take your pick on those ones. I agree with Mark here. No hitter who hits a ball 425 feet should end up with a double. Yeah, that's kind of a joke. Adamas hit that ball like 107 miles per hour, and it hits the yellow up 407 feet from home and 30 feet up a wall. Pretty insane. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, Audie, McCray's got a huge arm. Like that's what I've always said about McCray. Like he has 4 legit tools right now that teeter between really good and elite. It's just the problem with him is the one tool that he lacks is the one that might actually prevent him from ever being a regular player. Like he could sacrifice some of the glove for a high-end hit tool, and you're looking at a really good outfielder, or some of even some of the speed. But the problem for him is he doesn't utilize that speed to the best of his ability because he doesn't put the ball in play consistently enough. So I like him. I'm not giving up on the guy. I'm glad they still have a full another year. He's a guy that I think probably should spend the whole year in Sacramento. My hope for him is that he can get the strikeout rate under 25% by the end of the year. I'm not sure if he will, just given the way that the season's gone, and they're still trying to work him to get him to make some adjustments. But overall, like I wouldn't give up on the guy. He's got too much talent and ability that I'd want to see it out. Which player would you want hitting to get a crucial hit? Probably Flores, if I'm being honest. Just kind of has a knack for those clutch situations. That's kind of where you'd probably want to rely on a guy like Wilmer Flores in a tight situation if you need a hit late in a game. Tends to put the ball in play, tends to simplify his approach a lot in those situations. Hits a lot of line drives. I like that. That's part of why I actually think he's a very valuable bench player. I don't like him necessarily playing every day. I do like that they've got, even though he's had a couple rough games, I do like that they've gotten him in, gotten Dom Smith in more recently. I like that Flores has been used in more of that kind of hybrid, get 3 or 4 starts a week, but then be pulled off the bench a couple days. I just don't think he's suited. He gets tired. He falls apart when he plays too frequently. So like what they're doing there. But yeah, probably Flores. Can any of them hit a cutoff, man? I mean, amen, Rick. So, Mark, to answer this question, you watch McCray. Does he ever try and bump for hits, or does he think he's a home run hitter? The answer is yes. He does. He has added the bunt to his game this season, and it's much more frequent. The problem, you can't do it every time. So, and it's only going to help so much. So, I think it has incrementally improved, his strikeout rate and so on. I mean, he's kind of lived in the 29 to 32% range at most levels, but he's at 28 this season, 28%. So maybe that's part of what's improved that. He has dropped more bunts. I don't keep a running tally on it. I've just noticed it more this season. But you can't do it all the time, and that it's not the best thing for his development to continually do that. Like he needs to use it some and keep working on it, but he needs to get the hacks and he needs to try and keep putting the ball in play. Pirates may shop O'Neal Cruz. You think the Giants will be interested? O'Neal Cruz is a weird situation, so I will defer my trust to Buster Posey on that one. If they believe that this clubhouse can take him in and get him right and, get him playing the game the way he should, then I'm all for it. Do it. But I don't blame them if they don't want to. I mean, the guy got benched for basically making 3 lazy plays in a week. So that's a big red flag. Like, you can't just be dogging it out in the field like that. I don't care about, it's not an attitude issue. It's not saying like that's just effort. And I I don't know if that's something that a guy like Buster Posey is going to overlook. Like, I think that's going to be a big red flag for Buster and a hard no. That's my opinion. Now, like I said, if he believes in him and believes in guys like Chapman and Adamas and Flores and Yaz and all these guys to get him playing the game the right way, then fine, I'll put my trust in those guys. But I don't see that one happening personally. Robert says, would you consider Webb and Ray to be the best 1-2 pitchers in baseball? I'd have to look at like every staff, but I definitely think they're up there. I would probably guarantee that they're going to be like top 3 1-2 punches, but I would have to actually like go through team by team and try and figure that one out. So let's see. And then let's talk a little bit Chapman and Schmitt. I kind of mentioned it. They are hopefully going to be both back for the Philly series. One of the things when they get those two back, we've got a chance that this lineup might actually get, it's going to get a lot deeper. That's for sure. Now we might need to temper expectations on both those guys. They're going to both probably come back with no, Chapman's going to play 1 rehab game. I have a feeling Casey Schmidt's not going to play any rehab games. I'm pretty confident Casey Schmitt is just going to be handed the second base job. I mean, I shouldn't say handed. He earned it, but he's going to get handed that second base job. Fitzgerald comes in. He had a nice game. That was good to see. But now the last 2 games, I think he's like over 7 with, I swear, like 5 strikeouts. Looks just like the same guy that they sent down a week and a half or 2 weeks ago. So I think Casey Schmidt's going to be back at second. I think Chapman's going to be he's going to be playing third. How they construct the lineups can be really interesting. I personally think that they should hit Chapman second. And the reason is, Adames has had a couple good games there. Ramos has had some good games up near the top of the lineup. But historically, Chapman, 2 things for me. He's not been great with runners in scoring position. That's kind of been an overlying thing with him in his career. But number 2, the big thing is he's really good at getting on base. And he doesn't necessarily hit for a great average, but he's like 100th percentile in chase rate this season, or walk rate. He's getting on base and he has plus speed. He'll swipe you some bags. He'll, you can, if a guy like Rafael Devers hits a double, he's going to score. Like, I like him hitting second. I know Rafi's hit second a lot of his career, but I would personally put Chapman second. I would then put Ramos behind Devers. Ramos is Wilmer Flores has been their best RBI guy this season. Obviously, he's got 55 or so RBIs. Don't look now, but Ramos is at 46, and his performance with runners in scoring position has just been on a huge upward trajectory since like the end of April. So to me, Ramos is your best RBI guy. So I would be putting Ramos behind Devers. Gives Devers some solid protection with Chapman and Ramos behind him. And then, or Chapman in front of him, sandwiched around him. And then I'd probably, the way he's swinging it right now, I'd probably lean Willie. Maybe you put Lee there if Lee heats back up. This is assuming Yaz is going to still lead off. And then, Schmidt's probably going to be hitting 7th or 8th in that lineup. And if you've got Casey Schmitt hitting 7th or 8th, I mean, that's a pretty significant upgrade on what we've had recently. I mean, you look at our lineup today, and this is nothing against Dom Smith. He had a rough game, obviously, but 7, 8, 9, it was, Fitzgerald, Wisely, Kisner. I mean, you're just giving away 1/3 of your outs. And now they still hung 7 runs doing that, but it's we need some more depth in this lineup. And that kind of brings me around to the whole, Minasian thing. He comes out and says that he's going to be a lot more aggressive or they're going to be very aggressive at the trade deadline. Now, the hard thing is he's like, oh, we want to know all the minor league systems of other teams. We want to know. So he didn't really commit to a direction. If you listen, now they went and traded for Rafael Devers. Are they going to sell after trading for Devers? Probably not. That's just common sense. But, the way the team had been playing right before those comments, he said this, I think, before yesterday's game. So they were down to 4 games over 500 and kind of slipping out of it a little bit. Now they won 2 straight. Now they got the A's. They've got a chance to kind of right the ship here. But, you know, you look around and to me, the balancing act is going to be, I don't think that there's going to be anyone individually outside of maybe you can get a high end starter, like starting pitcher, but I don't think there's going to be anything individually for the offense that's going to just like greatly move the needle. We've mentioned it in the past that I think the real play for them is going to be either like a right-handed catcher, a right-handed outfielder to pair up with Yaz, a utility guy like an Isaiah Kiner Falefa, someone to give them some more depth. Because, frankly, I don't think you can really rely on Tyler Fitzgerald as your only option there the rest of the way. He's just had too rough of a season. So, maybe get a guy like that. Give yourself some better options off the bench late in games. Give yourself some better options for when these guys do need a day off, that you have somebody that can, that can not just be a automatic out there. There are some options now with them getting Barnes. Do I kind of question if they'd be willing to go trade for a catcher? Maybe not. I mean, Barnes didn't really cost them anything, so I don't think they'd be opposed to just moving off of that. But I think it's a good starting point for them. But, we've constantly brought up Travis d'Arnaud. I think he would be a great fit. I think Sean Murphy's an interesting one. I kind of wonder. I was talking with someone about that earlier today, where I think I could see Sean Murphy being an interesting one because the Braves seem a little more interested in Baldwin over there. And Murphy's under contract for about 3.5 more years at $15 million a year. There's a club option for that 4th year. I think he's 30 in his age 30 season right now. And he could be an interesting one. Now, if you make that trade, you're not trading for him to back up Patrick Bailey, not at $15 million a year. And I kind of wonder, the way they took Devers' contract, so they didn't have to get up like a premium prospect haul. If you go trade for a guy like Sean Murphy, if you're willing to take the whole contract from Atlanta, I don't think you're going to have to give up like a premium haul for him. I think if you're willing to take the money, because he's not having such a great season, that team, that Atlanta's going to be like, regardless of the money, they're going to just move him for a huge package. I think he could actually be had for a pretty reasonable haul. I think you could potentially get him without giving up any of like Bo or Dakota or Bryce. I think it's possible, but it would be kind of interesting to see what that kind of package is. And Addy, we don't say that name. We don't say that name on this channel. Will Castro, he'd be a good one. George says, Cody, do you think Josh Naylor would be a good fit for the Giants? I think he'd be a great middle of the order bat we need. As a fit, just from an offensive standpoint, he would be an absolutely phenomenal fit. From a roster standpoint, I don't really see where he would fit is the problem. They're a bit crowded now at first base. Obviously, you'd take him over Dom Smith in a second. And personally, I'd take him over, Wilmer Flores in a second. But that said, I'm not sure the team will actually move off Flores like that. And I don't think you can really carry 3 first base / DH types. That gets a little much. So that's kind of where the fit gets a bit froggy. But from an offensive standpoint, absolutely, they could really use another hitter like him. Robert says, if you can improve one area, which would you prefer? I mean, the obvious answer is the offense. I'm so tired of watching this offense score 2 a game. But if I think of the spot where they could get the highest level player to improve, probably starting pitching. I think that's probably their best chance. Unless this team is going to be willing to move off of Mike Yastrzemski, and that said, I'm not sure there is a real like needle moving outfielder out there. You got guys like O'Hearn, who's not great defensively at all. He's not even solid defensively. I have a hard time thinking they'll move him there. If Ramos was still playing like a plus corner outfielder, I could see them maybe moving him to right and then like trying to get someone into left. But Ramos has had a really poor season defensively, so I think they don't want to. They don't want to take a downgrade in right field. So I mean, unless Boston's going to turn around and flip a guy like Jaron Duran, which they might, but it's hard to envision who's out there that's actually a significant upgrade over Mike Yastrzemski in the outfield. So I don't think they're going to do that. Catcher is the only other spot. I mentioned Sean Murphy. You know, if they could go get Sean Murphy, to me, that's a big upgrade, given what Bailey's given you this season. But I don't know if Buster's going to be willing to make that trade. I don't know if they're going to be willing to just pivot off Bailey that quick. I would be impressed if they were, honestly. I mean, it takes some guts to do it, but then, you know, other than that, I mean, it's like I mentioned with the offense, you're really just looking at kind of bench guys that maybe hit left-handed pitching better so they can improve the floor there. You know, it gets a little difficult. So Seth Lugo, yeah, I think he, you know, if he's available, certainly had a great last couple of years, I believe. He'd be a nice fit. Mitch Keller was already brought up earlier. He'd be a good fit. It's hard to know. We're going to, in about 2 weeks, I think we're going to have a better feeling on who's available at the deadline, because with the third wild card, it muddies everything up a bit. It makes it to where almost most of the league feels like they're in contention for a wild card spot because of the fact that 6 teams now make it in each league. So it makes it to where there's not very many sellers. You end up with like 3 or 4 true sellers, and then you get a bunch of teams that will kind of buy, kind of sell. Who knows? We're going to kind of have to just wait and see who's for sure selling. I mean, the Marlins looked like a for sure seller 2 weeks ago, and they've won how many in a row? I mean, they were on 9 in a row. I know that. And I don't know if they've lost in the last couple of days, but yeah, you look at the Marlins, they're still 7 games under 500. So they're probably still going to sell, but you know, they might feel like, especially some of these guys that still have a couple of years of control, they might feel like, you know, we don't want to just give up good players this second, that they still have multiple years of control. And in the past, when they've been really bad, they've been willing to do that. But I know a lot of people brought up Kyle Stowers. They brought him up, and it's, you know, now you kind of look at them and you go, would the Marlins really trade him right now? The way he's playing, the way the team's been playing recently, I have a hard time thinking that they will, but you know, I don't put anything past teams like that. Yeah, Cabrera, the guy that looked like Greg Maddux throwing 100 miles an hour, the way he was dotting his stuff the other day, that guy in this park could be nasty. But I know he's got kind of a history of, you know, some inconsistent command. My pleasure, Tommy. Glad you enjoyed it. For anybody that doesn't know, we had a giveaway a couple weeks ago. So we are going to do another giveaway when we hit 2,000 subscribers. That's going to be the next one. I think we're at like 18, 20 and change so far. So for anybody here watching, hanging out, we've got like 180 of you sitting in here right now, which really appreciate it. Make sure you hit YouTube, hit the like, hit the subscribe. As we grow, we will, you know, we're at the kind of the milestones. We like to do these giveaways, get some good stuff. We're not 100% sure what we're going to do at 2K. We might do some like even your Dynasty Show merch. You guys have seen the hoodies. A lot of us have. We've been looking at maybe doing hats and shirts and stuff like that. So when we hit 2K, we're going to do something there. And then we just keep them rolling as we get farther along. Rick says, PV and Amsinger on MLB, we're talking about Acuna being available. He is such a tough one. And I don't mean it's tough because, you know, the player, if you just look at the player, don't even think about health, contract, all that stuff. If you just look at the player in a nutshell, I mean, it's the easiest call ever. Like you would do that trade, like you would trade whatever it takes to get that guy. But he does have a very significant injury history. I believe he's torn his ACL twice now. Now he's healthy now. He's having a huge season since he's come back. He's been on an absolute tear since he came back, but it just always, you know, it's just very risky. Now the contract is pretty friendly. For anybody wondering, he's 27 years old right now. He's got a $17 million contract this season. and then he's under contract for $17 million next year, and then there's 2 club options for $17 million apiece. That's going to be the easiest pickups in like baseball. Even if he was injured, they would pick that up. And then he's an unrestricted free agent at 31 years old in 2029. So he's under contract for 3.5 years, but you know, you're going to trade the farm for a guy like him, you know, regardless of his injury history. The reality is you are going to end up trading Bryce Eldridge. You're going to end up trading probably Dakota Jordan, Bo Davidson, or one or the other. You're probably going to trade a guy like Carson Wisenhunt in that deal. Like, you are going to gut your farm. And the Giants already don't have a great farm. And that's where it gets really tough. I see someone mentioning Tucker. Obviously, they're not going to trade Tucker, but you know, I'd be more inclined probably to just back the Brinks truck up to him, hand him a blank check, and see if he signs, which he probably won't. But I would probably be more inclined to do something like that than to trade away half your farm for Ronald Acuna, who at his best is an easy MVP candidate, but he's missed, I think, the majority of 2 seasons at this point due to significant injuries. And that's just that kind of scares me a bit on that one. So, got any other topics here that we want to talk about? Like I said, we're going to probably keep this one pretty short today. I definitely appreciate everybody that hopped in. I still wanted to have this show, even though we were down a couple people. So I appreciate you guys all hopping in. Hopefully you guys still enjoyed it, even though it was just me. We're kind of rambling today. But any other topics we want to jump on? Tommy earlier said Giants need to play Matos every day. Let me play instead of the other catchers. No, you don't get to play Tom Murphy. Even if he was healthy, I don't think they'd let that guy play right now. He is one of the worst defensive catchers I've ever seen. I can't stand it. But regarding your point about Matos, like I said, I don't think this team's gonna bail off of Yaz yet. As much as I would love to see Luis get an everyday shot, and I've mentioned it in the past that with Casey Schmitt, with Elliot Ramos, with the success those guys have had when they finally got everyday playing time, and they were, you know, and they knew they were going to get to play a good amount. Now with Ramos, he actually had he was still competing with Matos a little bit at the time. They knew one was probably going to get a significant run, but the other one was going to probably have to go back, because I think everyone remembers, I want to say Conforto got hurt at the same time as Lee, and Slater got hurt. I mean, they had like 3 dudes get injured. And they knew like they probably had 3 or 2, 3, 4 weeks of run, but eventually one was going to have to go back. And, you know, Ramos, to his credit, took the job and never gave it up. And Schmitt, he got an opportunity where, you know, obviously got hurt, but Schmitt had an opportunity where he knew Chapman was probably going to miss at least 3 or 4 weeks given the injury. So he knew he had a run that he was going to get to play every day. And that's big for these guys. And I always wonder with a guy like Luis Matos, like what would happen if he knew he had a month, you know, if he knew he didn't have to feel like he was going to have to hit 400 to stay up, if he could come up and just settle in and do his thing for, 4 or 5 weeks. Like I kind of wonder what would happen with guys like him, you know. And I think Casey Schmitt and Ramos's success is just it's more reason, it's just more support to that feeling. So it's tough though. I don't think he's going to get the opportunity this season, barring an injury, but he's out of options after the year, both him and Luciano. McRae is the one guy that still has an option. And actually, I'd even throw in Wade Meckler's out of options after this season too. So you've got all 3 of those dudes that you're going to have to figure it out. And I think Luciano, we mentioned earlier, he's probably more likely to get traded. I think Matos has a real shot to be going into the, unless the team lands a guy like Kyle Tucker or some, Byron Buxton becomes available in trade or something crazy. Like, unless they go out and trade for some big time outfielder, the free agent markets are really thin when it comes to corner outfield. So I would still look to try and get a 4th outfielder type, but I think Matos, that's going to be a shot. I think this team's going to probably go into next season with a very strong possibility of like he's gonna, maybe they don't just hand him the job, but they're going to like set it up for him to take the job. And at that point, he might get 1 or 2 months. And if he takes a job and runs with it, they don't have to worry about it. And if he falls on his face, they might be looking next trade deadline at looking to upgrade corner outfield. So we'll kind of have to wait and see there. But the way Yaz is playing well enough that I don't see the team looking to move off him, unfortunately, for someone like Matos. He's been very healthy the last couple of years. He had that one season where I swear he pulled his hamstring about every it felt like every 2 or 3 weeks. I want to say he pulled it like 4 times in one season, 4 or 5 times. But last couple of years, he's managed to stay on the field. So that's a credit to Mike Yastrzemski for sure. George, I love this comment. But yeah. I'll give you guys another minute. If you guys have anything else we want to discuss really quick, we'll hop on it. Otherwise, next week, we're gonna have we're gonna still do our normal minor league update on Tuesday. We'll get back on our Thursday, our normal timing on our live shows. Probably Dan and Ricky will, I'm sure, be back next week. We're getting closer to the trade deadline, so we'll be doing some stuff there. And I am trying to work out. Getting on. I don't know if I'll be on my channel or their channel, but we're trying to work on getting with another guest here. So we're hopefully going to have another show for you guys at some point. I don't know if it'll be next week, the following week, but we'll be doing that. I'll announce it when we actually have it confirmed and time set and all that. But yeah, that's kind of what's coming up next. We might record an extra video or two here and there. We try and do that for sure. But Robbie Cy Young candidate, nice complete game. Yeah, absolutely. He was money today. Him and Webb are kind of both up there as far as candidates go. I think Skeens is probably still going to be the favorite if I had to guess, but yeah, I mean, they definitely deserve to be talked about in that category for sure. And there's a lot of baseball left. Skeens, I think it's hard because, I don't think the writers and all that have moved away from the whole wins-loss thing. So I don't think it's going to get held against Skeens that he has a losing record on a really bad Pirates team. But there's a lot of baseball left to be played. So he's going to have the advantage of being the name. That's kind of the sexy name for writers. But, there's a lot left. And if guys like Webb and Ray have massive second halves, I think there's a chance that they could maybe steal that award. But I do feel like right now they're probably going to finish in the top like 4, each of them, the way they're throwing it. When do I think this is probably in reference to Dakota Jordan? I see your comment above there. When do I think he'll be in AAA? My gut is that he'll reach AAA at some point in the 2027 season. So he's only 22 right now. So keep that in mind. I think he's going to be 22 the entire year, if I'm not mistaken. So that would put him at about 24. He was a college draftee. So his birthday, his birthday is May 9th. So he turned 22, a couple months ago, basically. So I could see 2027 him being in AAA. I think they're going to move when they have the draft. Now the draft is, I think, mid-July here. It's in a couple weeks. When they have the draft, I think within 2 weeks, I think we're going to see quite a bit of movement, because you can only have so many on your active rosters in the minors. I think it's like 165. And they're going to have to move some guys, which they're going to release some guys. I could probably list off 10 players that I could care less to see if they release out of their system. They just have really not contributed much down there and don't have a lot of future there. So they're going to have to make some moves, and they're going to want some of these guys to play in San Jose a little bit. Now, we just saw Rainer Arias get called up to San Jose. Now, he struggled. I think he's like 0 for 10 on the year, but we're going to we're going to see, I think, a lot of movement. I think you're going to see guys like Scott Bandura and Bo Davidson. I think you're going to see guys like them get promoted. I think you're going to see guys like Dakota Jordan, Jacob Christian, Carlos Gutierrez, barring health for all these guys. I think you're going to see those guys get moved up. There's some others in San Jose that are having a really good seasons. There's some more pitching down there that's having really good seasons. Guys like Jacob Bresnahan's been really good down there. Nico Mazza has been really good down there. Hunter Dryden has been incredible down there this season. They've got some arms down there that are just dealing, and depending on what they draft and what they want to move, we might see some of those guys get promoted. You've already seen some. Greg Ferrone, he got promoted from San Jose to Eugene. So we've seen a little bit of the movement. I think we're going to see a lot more. I would love to see it. I kind of circled, I think it's like July 20. I'd have to pull up the calendar. July 28th. I kind of circled that. It's the last week of July. The high A Eugene season runs through September 7th. So if they were to move a guy like Dakota up there on July 28th, that would get him 6 full weeks. And for these guys, what I've noticed, if they're playing every day, they typically will get about 25 to 30 plate appearances in a week because it's 6 games. So, if you can get that guy up there by that time frame and he gets 6 weeks in Eugene, that could be about 150 to 175, 150 to 180 plate appearances in high A. And I mean, that's huge. That's not nothing. That's for sure. So I'd love to see them get him around that time frame, him and Bo, and move all these guys. And I think the AA season actually runs a little longer. So even if they moved Bo at the same time up to, and Scott Bandura up to AA at that same time, you're talking about getting I think an extra week, maybe 2. So for those guys. So I think that's a good timeline for those guys to move. But yeah, like Hayden said, please smash the like on the video, hit the subscribe button if you're not already. Really appreciate all the support you guys gave. I'm going to wrap it up for tonight. We kept it to about an hour today. Great win for the Giants. Hopefully they keep the momentum going against the Las Vegas A's of Sacramento, and they can get healthy and get right and get to the break and finish strong going into the break. And then, hopefully this team can get healthy and get ready for a second half run. Cause I think once the offense is fully healthy and they have a deeper lineup, I think they've got a chance to make some noise at least. So appreciate everybody. We will catch you. You'll hear from me on Tuesday, but we'll catch you guys next Thursday, and go Giants.